Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Pleasure.
Pleased to be here.
And we have 4 releases this week. Kathleen Ayres and Elizabeth Johns weren't able to be with us this week. We'll catch up with them on another time. But I want to make sure I mention their book. Sinfully Tempted is book 2 in the 5 Deadly Sins series. That's Kathleen's book. And that is part of the Dragonblade Flame line. And there's a moth. There's a moth that leads to that leads to a liaison, and I love the idea of that so much that instead of a fake romance, we have a fake relationship that then turns into a romance. So that one just looks like so much fun, and that's Sinfully Tempted. That's Kathleen Ayres' book, and then Elizabeth John has book 8 in the Gentleman of Nights book. It's Return of the Night, and this is it's a series of wonderful gentlemen all together. So I'm like really excited to see that one come back again, that series come back again. So I will make sure I pop the link to those in the comments. So if you haven't gotten them, you can get them right away, and we'll make sure we catch up with Elizabeth and Kathleen sometime in the future too. But this week we do have Jude here to talk about Snowing the Seven Doves. I love the setup for this one. I love the idea of the 7 soiled doves and Snowy White as being a character, with a redemption arc and a wicked stepfather to find, and all of those kind of things. So it's part of the Twisted Fairy Tales, part of the Twisted Regency Tales. I'm sorry, a Twisted Regency Tale series. Can you tell us about the book, Jude?
Yes, when I first started out to do a twist upon a Regency tale, Snow White was one of the first 4 that I obviously started with Beauty and the Beast, because that's been a trope I've been drawn to for a very, very, very bright, I think. And it's a trope that we often see in Regency romance. So I gave it its twist by the twist in these stories is that they're set in the Regency. They don't involve magic, but they do take a lot of the magical elements and reinterpret them as things that might have actually happened. And the roles are reversed. So my beast was a woman, a lady, and my Snow White is Snowy White. He's a young man. He's been brought up in a brothel with 7 foster mothers, having been found in a alley, beaten and really in a bad way by one of the ladies of the night. And during the book, you get a lot more backstory, but fundamentally, the 7 friends decide to set up their own brothel with the money they're given by his mother to keep him hidden. And he grows up there. They give him the education of a gentleman. Mm-hmm. He's also the bookkeeper in the brothel. Right at the beginning of the story, he has a very annoying woman who is visiting the brothel. She's a countess in her own right, one of those unusual earldoms that descends to the daughter if there are no sons. And he doesn't know what this woman is doing down here. I mean, she's doing a lot of good because she's a herbalist and she's treating all sorts of ills. But he's a bit annoyed about the whole thing, largely because she's gorgeous and he's in lust almost immediately.
Oh, poor thing.
So but he's coming up to his 25th birthday, and his foster mothers have decided it's time for him to learn who he is. So one of my favorite scenes is the scene in which he is called in to see the 6 surviving foster mothers, and they explain how they found him and how they recognized him by the white streak in his hair, which he has been loyally dyeing ever since he left home to go to university, because they made him promise that he'd do so. So they explain that he's related to a viscount, that he's the son of a viscount, and he says, you mean I'm related to a viscount? And the Poppy, one of the foster mothers, who is the brothel's cook, says, Ducky, you are a viscount. I really enjoyed that. That's the end of the chapter.
Yeah. And I love the idea of there being 7 mothers, like of him being surrounded by that kind of maternal energy. I think that's just lovely.
And I think if you grow up, even in the Regency with its misogyny, if you grow up as the foster son of 7 strong-minded women who are running their own business, whatever that business might be, you are going to be respectful of women.
Yeah. Yeah, are you going to get bumped?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, that sounds like so much fun, and I love that he has to fight the insta-lust thing too, because I imagine that there are lots of twists attached to that. So,
well, at first he thinks that he's of a completely different class, but even when he knows that he's not, he's still very suspicious of the whole thing, but and quite certain that she couldn't possibly be interested in him.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. And I know Perchance to Dream is coming up next. And then there is a Rapunzel story after that. Is that
There's a Rapunzel story in the works. And then the one after that is The Goose Girl. So I'm just starting to, I'm about 20,000 words off finishing Rapunzel. And I'm just starting to map The Goose Girl out in my mind. And both of those stories are set well before this series, because they involve characters that we've already seen in this series. So the current hero is Deerhaven, the Marquis of Deerhaven, who is brother to John, the hero of Perchance to Dream, and wife to Cordelia, who is a great friend of the heroines of the other 3 books.
Oh, wonderful.
And so this is Deerhaven's story. Deerhaven is the young man who is shut up by his father in a tower, and the only way he can, and he's being starved into submission. Father insists he's going to marry someone he doesn't want to marry. He's already chosen Cordelia. And so he makes a horsehair rope out of the stuffing of the furniture and lets it down to bring through the bars to bring up food and other things that he can do while it's locked in the tower. So I thought horsehair furniture was such a gift.
Yeah, because it'd be hard to come up with enough other hair to make that work. So,
yeah, and I mean, cutting your sheets into strips and dropping it out wouldn't have had the right tone at all.
No. Horsehair is much more appropriate for a Rapunzel story.
And the Goose Girl is Arthur Vercy's brother, and his brother Lance was hero of the Talons of a Lion. So this is Percy's story.
Yeah.
He's a duke in this series, but in the next, in his own book, he's off to meet the woman that his father has betrothed him to, and something happens. I think he might just get a bad cold and be left at the inn. And when the friend he's traveling with arrives, they assume the friend is him.
Oh, fun.
So when he arrives, he decides it's a good idea to go along with that, because he'd really like to get to know his bride before they get all the family stuff going on. So that's that's the start of The Goose Girl, which is the sincerest flattery.
Oh, fun. So we get a twist upon a Regency tale, and we get a twist upon the timelines too. So that's
well, it's they do this to you, don't they? Characters, you put someone in as a secondary character, and they're interesting, and you want to know how they got there.
Yeah. I love it when they talk to you so much that they demand their own stories. So.
Well, it's so That's Snowy.
Yeah.
I had I think another thing I really liked about that book was figuring out how to give him a poison apple and have him drop down dead and kissed back to life again.
Oh, I want to know that too.
It was fun. He had I'll tell you, he had a passion for apple pies. They were his favorite food. So when someone at his pre-wedding dinner bought him a slice of apple pie, he took a big bite, and it was laced with hemlock.
So how do you unhemlock yourself?
Well, the way hemlock works is that it paralyzes the muscles, so you can't breathe because your lungs aren't working. So what you need, and what they do today, is keep the lungs working, keep the lungs filled with air long enough for your body to get rid of the hemlock.
So somebody could pray for you, like the kiss of life. Your life.
We used to call it the kiss of life.
Aye.
So who knew? I didn't know. I had no idea.
Well, we're not going to try it, but it's good to know.
Well, if someone accidentally eats hemlock, what you know is you keep them breathing with mouth to mouth until someone turns up till the EMTs turn up.
Yeah, and I hope it's not like hemlock on the lips kind of thing, like a Romeo and Juliet, one last kiss.
I think it takes quite a bit of hemlock.
Okay. Because I'd like not to add that to the list of things I need to worry about in my day to day. So.
Yeah, I get that. I hear you.
Well, that sounds like so much fun, and I'm excited for that one and for the rest of the series. And then Meara, you have a release this week too. It's the Moonstone Major. It's a book in the Moonstone Landing series, and this the covers for these are so lovely. Everything about it is so lovely. It's just the idea of even the idea of Moonstone Landing, I think, is so charming. So can you tell us a little bit about the Moonstone Major? Oh no, is she gone?
She's frozen.
She's frozen.
I'm really looking forward to this one. I've read all of them up till now, and it's taken too long to get from the Moonstone Marquis to the Moonstone Major.
I know, and it feels like the series just started, but it's I just lost my words. I lost Meara and my words at the same time. That's not a good trend.
Because but I love the first one was in one of the anthologies. It was the actual ghost story.
The holiday one, I think. The Halloween one. I think it was a ghost story.
Halloween one, yes. A couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah.
It was lovely to see it again.
While we're waiting for Meara to pop back in, one of the things that's coming up, we have another Halloween anthology that comes up in October. So keep an eye out for that, because it's one of those ones where you get, just so many stories for 99 cents. It's an amazing deal. So
yeah, I have it on pre-order. Yeah. I love anthologies.
Well, I like, because you get a taste on it, and I like the idea of being able to kind of dole the stories out like treats for yourself. I think that's such a lovely self-care thing. Yeah.
And when you've only got a short time, because you've been writing all day and it's nearly bedtime, but you really, really need a story.
Yeah.
Somebody else's story. An anthology is marvelous, because except that you then get to the end of the story and want to read another one, and before you know where you are, it's 2:00 in the morning.
Well, that's a problem for the person, but not for the publisher or the author. So. But I do find I have to have something at the end of the day. I can't just go to sleep. I need to have a little bit of I need my brain to be teased to bed.
And a good book is hard to put down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much, very much. So while we're waiting for Meara to pop back in, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and we can start while we're waiting on her, was about fairy tales. Since your books are all based on, the inspiration is all fairy tales, and I watched Puss in Boots with the kids last night because that's what the teenagers wanted to do. Shock face. But watching all the little references teased in and out, and there's fairy tales and nursery rhymes all mixed together, and realizing the ones that my kids didn't know, and having to say, well, this is who Jack Horner was, it's like, it was interesting to me to think about how universal those stories are and how much they're a part of, the history of us and the way, the way we tell stories now. So could you just talk a little bit about how you landed on the fairy tales that you landed on and what your inspiration was?
Yes, I grew up at a time when our stories came to us in books or across the radio or were told to us by older people, usually women. And there was a series on the radio of retellings of classic fairy tales with music. And to this day, I can sing a lot of the songs from those stories, probably with half the words missing, but, in fact, all of the books and stories I've done for Dragonblade so far have been fairy tale retellings. I think that fairy tales and their themes underpin a lot of stories. We often see Beauty and the Beast
That's one of my favorites
as a theme. We often see Cinderella as a theme. I'm planning to do a Little Mermaid, and that's a bit tricky, but it's that it. I just wanted to make it more. I wanted to make it more deliberate, not just it crossed my mind. I would, as you know, I usually blame the plot elves. The plot elves came up with the concept, and I sat down and started writing snippets of how it might go. Snowy was originally Snowy and the Seven Whores, and it was a very different story to the one I've finished up with. And I never meant Snowy and the Seven Whores as a long-term title because I was reasonably certain people would expect something quite different to what I planned to give them. But we only came up with Snowy and the Seven Doves after the cover had been done, and that was brainstorming with Carolyn Warfield on possible other words that in the Regency referred to.
But it makes perfect sense,
It does,
and it has exactly the right flavor too. It feels, it feels
Snow
accurate.
White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's got this. It's got the. It's got an oral rhythm that matches the original story.
Yeah.
So, but they are universal stories. You were saying earlier that that stories from around the world come from a different cultural resonance. But the idea of facing enormous odds and winning, despite everything being stacked against you, often with magical help, comes up all over the world. And the other thing that comes up all over the world is that, and I think that's a really significant thing to me as a romance writer, is that around the world, the everyday storytellers have been women.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense because we tell them to children.
But also we tell them to one another. You're doing a lot of jobs that are communal, doing the laundry, doing the cooking, and
quilting, dyeing fabric,
whatever. These are the things that someone in later generations, someone might have read a book while that was happening.
Yeah, the same time that I would do audiobooks would be the time when we would be sitting together and somebody would be telling stories. That makes perfect sense.
Yes. So just as romance is written largely by a woman, mostly for women, and isn't over until the women get what they want. In fairy tales, they were made up largely by women. They were told largely by women, and they were often, in Western society anyway, about people without power succeeding anyway.
Yeah, there's a David and Goliath component to it, but there's something bigger than you, and you triumph over it.
So it seemed to me it was a perfect fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
So it's been so much fun thinking of things like the pie, the apple pie,
Mm-hmm.
with I think the Little Mermaid will have been a naval officer. Oh, here's Meara.
We've got Meara back. We're going to let Meara talk about her story really quick. All the internet connection holds. Technology.
I'm sorry. I guess the cable, everything went down. My phone, the cable, everything.
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they chose just the right moment.
No, there's aftermath of storm stuff for so many people right now too. So, so Meara, we were talking about how much we loved the idea of the Moonstone landing and about how much we were looking forward to the Moonstone Major. Can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Oh yeah, so this is basically the third big book in this series. I've got the 2 novellas which kind of introduced the series, and then we've got the Moonstone Duke, the Moonstone Marquis, and now the Moonstone Major. And even though it's named after the heroes, it's actually the 3 heroines are sisters, the Killigrew sisters. And Henley was in the Duke, was the heroine for the Duke, and Phoebe was the little lioness heroine for the Marquis. And now we have Chloe, who is the love interest of the Major. And now the Major, his name is Fionn Brennan, and he was basically dropped off as a baby at an orphanage in London on the seedier side. Grew up never knowing who he was, basically escaped that orphanage when they were going to give him over to, chimney sweeps. And, if you know a little bit about the history of these chimney sweeps,
it's awful.
Yes, they use these little boys to climb up the chimneys. They get burnt, they get soot in their lungs, they die young. Well, he was not going to follow that path, so he ran from the orphanage and basically lived on the street with a little group of other friends. And so he grew up very hard, had starvation, frozen winter, just a hard, no roof over his head, very hard living conditions, until one day the Viscount came along and picked him up off the street and gave him an education, took him into his household. And so Fionn, who had no idea what his name was, just adopted the name of this Viscount Brennan. So Fionn Brennan is the name of this character. And he comes to Moonstone Landing. Landing is this kind of a town. I don't know if you ever feel like things are all going wrong and you just want to go to a retreat or someplace. Well, you kind of to this place, and while there's no magic necessarily, your body feels that it's like you're reinvigorated. It's just things fall into place. It's just a beautiful sea coast of Cornwall. It's just a wonderful place. And so you feel that something magical is going to happen. And Fionn has fallen in love with Chloe Killigrew, but she's the daughter of an earl, right? He's a nobody. She's the daughter of an earl. And he's basically vowed to himself that he's never going to let her know his feelings, which of course is very hard to control because they see each other constantly in this town. He's now in command of the fort and responsible to oversee this hospital, this military hospital that's being built in Moonstone Landing. And so Chloe and her sister, and basically the whole community, they're involved. He sees them. He's just madly in love with her and won't say anything to her. Tries to keep away, but of course, so the story basically opens up and she's about to get run over by this runaway carriage. And he, of course, happens to be there and pulls her out of the way, saves her life. And then the story starts from there because, all right, he saved her life. Well, now he's convinced himself he's got to see how she's doing because she had twisted her ankles, and she's in love with him too. She's always been in love with him. She's a beautiful girl, courted by everybody, by all these well established, but she knows her heart, and he's he feels drawn not only to her but also to Moonstone Landing and Moonstone Cottage, which belongs to the three Killigrew sisters. And he says, like, this place, there's something about this place. So Chloe has decided she believes him. She's going to follow up on this, on whatever this feelings he has. And she finds a secret panel in the cottage.
Oh, wow.
And behind this panel is a group of documents that nobody had ever seen before. They didn't know what it was. And she starts going through these documents. And as she goes through these documents, she just senses that there's a coincidence. The former owner, who was the sea captain, he had a sister called Fiona. And when she sees that, and she says, and Fionn is his name. Let me dig a little further. Let me see what's more. And so things unravel. Mysteries, secrets, heartbreak, betrayal, all kinds of things unravel. But it all ties together at the end. And because of Chloe's love for him, and she knows that they're meant to be together. There's something that's going on. And so we get a very good resolution to the story. I don't want to give too much away, but I probably have already given too much away. But it's the time. And the funny thing about it was that as I was writing the Moonstone Marquis, I'm writing along, and all of a sudden, Chloe or the Phoebe come up to the Marquis and says, "There's a young man in the church just sitting there, and he looks very lonely. And we think he's military, and we think, he was in the army, and we think you should go talk to him and maybe something." And I'm writing going, wait a minute, where did he come from? But and then Fionn started to talk to me and tell me why he was important to be introduced here. And this is why, because he became the hero and really tied the whole thing from book one, from the first novella, which was Moonstone Landing, where the three Killigrew sisters, their aunt, is the one who bought the cottage after the sea captain had just died under very heroic circumstances. He had rescued the children of the town from a sinking ship during a storm, but he died in the storm. So Moonstone Landing, it was a ghost. It had to be a ghost story. Yeah. But you know what? So what? The ghost the aunt fell in love with the sea captain, and it was a beautiful story. And it really, everything sprang from there. Mm-hmm. So, and it all comes back, and all these characters are somehow, they've connected. Their lives have been touched and are affected by the sea captain who very bravely gave up his life in Moonstone Landing, the novella. And so what seems like it's just a little story actually starts to weave the threads of all these other stories, and they end up, and I think I've gotten just the very early ARC reviews and the returns on it. And, as an author, you're always very worried, and you don't know. I thought it was a really powerful, strong story, but who knows what everybody else will think. But it's become the little bits of comments I've been seeing have been that everybody has really loving it. Very, very powerful, moved, really, Somerset's the best they've read all year. So I'll keep my fingers crossed and hope that readers feel the same way. So.
Yeah, lovely. So while you're out, Jude and I were talking a little bit about fairy tales and stories. And I think one of the things that's so lovely about your books is that, you talked about Moonstone Landing not really being magic per se, but feeling like magic. And I think so many of your stories have that element that, the Book of Love, the Dark Gardens, where there is just something that is just a little bit, not supernaturally, but just just that kind of everyday magic that I think is really lovely.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I like that thought very much, because I don't look at, romance. It's not just people falling in love. It's not just the sex scenes. It's not just the dating. It's not just the it's the moment of enchantment.
Yes.
And so as I write with each story, it's that moment when it's like your heart swells and that this is the person.
This is more than,
this is the one.
This is more.
Yes,
this is more than
this could be something very special. So, and I feel it's also, I tend to have my heroes really kind of know their own mind, and when they see the heroine, they get it. They know. They might resist it, but at at some level, they know
she's the one.
I need her. And so, and I just feel that that's very much the fairy tale aspect of it. It's just, whatever you do, you're just, one day you're walking down the street, and then the next moment it's magical, and you're meeting the person that you're meant for. And that's how I look at these stories, these romances. Definitely, they must have the enchantment.
And I love that word. I love that idea of the moment of enchantment, because it is, I think, one of the things that I love about romance is the idea of seeing and being seen. That you have a character that sees the other character for who they are, and that that's a reciprocal relationship where you become somebody I can trust to mirror myself back, the version of myself I want to be back to me. And vice versa. And there's that moment where you realize that this is bigger than, this is bigger than just an ordinary relationship. It is.
Yes. This will be a new road on your life. This is,
and I think the Book of Love series actually makes that explicit, that there's that progression from, here is a possible, oh wow, look at that moment, through to this person sees me.
Yeah.
Yes. This person is my match. Yeah.
It's also part of why fairy tales are so powerful too. I think, that idea of that moment when things are bigger than they actually are, that moment of enchantment is
Yeah.
And I always feel too that when the hero and heroine get together, it lifts both of them. Mm-hmm. It opens both of them up because they get each other.
Yeah.
They support each other in whatever they want to do, and it makes them better people and able to fulfill their dreams.
Yeah.
I think that's very much what's happening with my next month's book, Perchance to Dream. We've got two people who have been broken by various circumstances, and who are carrying on with their lives and doing important and interesting things, but they're not whole until they're together.
And I think we love that, I mean, I as a reader, I think that's one of the things. And we were talking a little bit, Meara, while you were gone, about Jude was talking about storytelling from a female perspective, and fairy tales being told by women, and romance being written by and for women. I think one of the universal parts of it is that is something that we all want. I think maybe it's a little bit easier for us as women, which is nice that there's something that's a little bit easier for us to kind of hold on to that idea. But I think everybody wants that moment where someone sees and accepts you for who you are. They see you, that being visible to someone, and not having to wear a mask and not having to hide behind things because somebody actually really sees you, is that kind of the universal longing that's in us.
Yes.
We could do this for hours. It's so lovely to talk to both of you. We could keep going forever and ever and ever, but we are past time. I'm so glad, Meara, that you were able to join back in. I appreciate everybody just bearing with us with the technology thing. It amazes me that we can talk like this, and sometimes from all around the world.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity. We just have to bear with it when it doesn't work sometimes. So I appreciate it.
Can I just add one more thing? I think that I forgot and then I did to say no, because of that the Moonstone Lane, we're going to add 3 more books to it, and I just turned in the Moonstone Governess. So we're going to have the 2, and there'll be 2 more.
I love series that keep going.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Wait until Catherine says, enough. Let's get a new series from you. So
no, I love series that keep going, and that's true of Elizabeth. Elizabeth's this week's book is number 8, and Kathleen has 5 deadly sins instead of 7 deadly sins, but I think we're going to work on her real hard to come up with some extra sins because.
Right. And then Jude, you've got and your fairy tale, your twisted fairy tales, right? How those are.
I've got another 4 accepted by Dragonblade. The first one is due at the end of September, so yes, there'll be at least another 4. But there are many. I have a notebook with. Oh, here it is. I actually read Grimm's fairy tales, and no, it isn't. That's another notebook, and wrote ones that I could see working, because a lot of fairy tales are not actually about a romance; they're about something else. But there are a lot of fairy tales. I mentioned to Evelyn, Meara, when you were offline, I'm getting my head around The Little Mermaid, but I think he's going to be a naval officer who has been in a wreck and has saved this girl, who is obviously an aristocrat of some kind, by swimming her to shore. But after that, he has to have several operations on his legs and his feet because of his injuries. And the one thing he could always do when he was charming someone was dance, and now he can't dance anymore.
Yeah.
So
that idea
sounds wonderful.
One thing for something that you're longing for too, I think, is such a Little Mermaid thing,
It's such a Little Mermaid thing, and so I'm just working out the different elements, but that's where I think I'm going with it. It is getting, as you say, the essence. What is the essence of the story? Yeah, and then how does that work for us?
And that's, I think, that kernel of truth is a thing too. It's that moment. It's the thing that makes it more than just the 2 characters. It makes it more universal. It makes it something that everybody is drawn to.
So Beauty and the Beast is about falling in love with the inner person and not their outer shell, isn't it? I mean, that's the essence of Beauty and the Beast. And Cinderella is that striving through adversity, and not letting things get you down. And the
transformative power of love too,
Both of them, it's love is not attached to outward appearance. Cinderella's outward appearance was at the Ash Girl.
Yeah. And there's a love and action component too.
Yeah, a lot of love and action. So that it's about finding what is that. The power of love is right through, and as it is in all of our stories, but that there are different. The fairy tales give us something universal that if you can capture what it is about that story, then you can put it into another story.
Yeah, lovely. Well, we could keep going. We can talk about this until we go past work time and into wine time, and that could be just lovely.
Well, it's 9:45 here, so I've got a little
Morning.
I'll go for you.
Yeah, Evelyn and I, we're ready to break out the wine bottles.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
You're having your coffee.
Well, ladies, it was delightful to talk to you this week. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'll pop the links for both of your books in the comments. So if you haven't gotten them yet, you can binge, and they're going to be long series. So hang in there, because there are more books coming. I always love it when there are more books coming. So thanks so much, ladies. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us this week.
Thank you.
Bye.